Good morning. This summit is an historic summit because we have already made an agreement that ensures that Sweden will become a full-fledged member of the alliance. And this is good for Sweden, it is good for Turkey, it's good for the whole NATO alliance, and not least it's good for the Baltic region, for Lithuania and the other countries in this region. At the summit we also make important decisions, sending a clear message to Ukraine that we stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes, and expect allies also to reiterate their commitment to provide military support to Ukraine to help them liberate more land. On the membership issue, I also expect that allies will send a clear and positive message on the path forward towards membership for Ukraine. Full interoperability between the Ukrainian forces and the NATO forces. This will move Ukraine closer to NATO. To strengthen the political ties with the establishment of the NATO-Ukraine Council. We will have the inaugural meeting tomorrow with President Zelensky. And then to remove the requirement from a two-step process into a one-step process. From a two-step process into a one-step process. So all of this will send a positive and strong message. Then allies will also make important decisions to further strengthen our deterrence and defense with new defense plans and more forces on high readiness. We also agree that I also expect that allies will agree a more ambitious defense investment pledge where 2% of GDP for defense will be a minimum. And then lastly, I look forward to also welcoming our Indo-Pacific partners at this summit. This will demonstrate that security is not...
Security guarantees didn't stop Vladimir Putin in 2014. The Budapest Memorandum was worthless piece of paper to Vladimir Putin. What is concrete about the future security guarantees for Ukraine that will make a difference? And the second point, if I may, on the same issue, Ukraine has fears that perhaps security guarantees will change over time with different leaderships, perhaps a different presidency in the US. What kind of guarantees are there that security guarantees will outlast any changes of presidency in the United States? Thank you, sir.
Well, we all agree that the most imminent task now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation in Europe. So the most important thing we can do is to continue to provide weapons, ammunition, military support to Ukraine, because unless Ukraine prevails as a nation, as a democratic nation in Europe, there is no issue to be discussed about security guarantees or membership in NATO at all. Then on the membership issue, we will send within hours later on today when all allies agree on the text. But I expect that allies will agree a message which is clear on the need to move Ukraine closer to NATO, with making sure that their forces are interoperable with the NATO-Ukraine Council, and also removing the requirement for a membership action plan. This is all about moving Ukraine closer to NATO membership, which will be extremely important for Ukraine, and also demonstrates the unity and the strength of the message that NATO allies are sending to Ukraine.
And nuclear security in the region is worsening. So we have the Russian forces occupying Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. We have the announcement of Vladimir Putin to put Russian nuclear warheads in Belarus. What will be the reaction of NATO if some nuclear accident happens in Zaporizhzhia, or these nuclear warheads will be really placed in Belarus? What will be the response of NATO countries?
So, first of all, the nuclear rhetoric of Russia is dangerous and reckless. And Russia must know that a nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought. NATO allies are, of course, monitoring closely what Russia is doing. We condemn the announcement that Russia will deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus. We are monitoring closely what they are doing. So far, we haven't seen any changes in the Russian nuclear deployments posture that requires any changes from our side, but we remain vigilant, and we will ensure that we, of course, are ready to protect and defend every NATO ally against any potential threat. On the situation in Zaporizhzhia, our message to Russia is that they had to withdraw their forces because the way they now behave in Zaporizhzhia is undermining the security of this biggest nuclear power plant in Europe.
Jenso Stoltenbergo, one question on the membership language in the conclusions. Will the word invitation feature in the conclusions? And the second question, a few days ago, Mr. Zelensky said there was no point in coming to Vilnius if there was no concrete discussion and concrete thing that NATO could offer. What would that have meant to NATO, and now what is your feeling about this? Will he come?
President Zelensky will come. I'm glad to welcome him both at the dinner tonight and at the inaugural meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council tomorrow. NATO ally will send a strong, united, positive message on the path forward for Ukraine. But I will not go into the exact language now, because that will be made public when the communique with the text is agreed, and that will happen later on today. But rest assured, the message will be positive, the message will be strong, the message will be united from NATO allies. This is both about the path forward for membership, but also about the most imminent task, and that is military support. Because unless we ensure that Ukraine win this war, unless we ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation, there is no membership issue to be discussed. So we have to understand the timelines, the tasks, and the first and the most imminent task is to ensure that Ukraine prevails and President Putin does not win this war.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary General, can you say something about the decisive issues in the last moments of the negotiations between Turkey and Sweden? How important were, for example, the F-16s probably arriving from the United States? And lastly, how relieved are you personally of this result?
Well, the agreement is public. You can see the statement, and that statement addresses the same issues that we agreed in Madrid. So the agreement yesterday, it builds on and is implementing the agreement that we reached last year in Madrid. So this is about stepping up the cooperation to fight terrorism, which is extremely important for Turkey, but also for all NATO allies. It's about the lifting restrictions on arms exports, and it's also about ensuring that this is a long-term continued cooperation between Sweden and Turkey also after accession. So there are no other agreements. The agreement is public, as the agreement was in Madrid, and the good news is that we have then paved the way for Sweden to become a full member. And I would thank President Erdogan, I also thank Prime Minister Kristersson for their constructive approach that enabled the decision yesterday to allow Sweden to become a full member, and for Turkey then to ratify the accession protocols for Sweden.
Regarding the agreement reached by Turkey and Sweden yesterday, I would like to ask, will NATO act as a guarantor, especially for promises made by Swedish side, new promises made to be fulfilled, not only before but after the ratification as well?
I'm absolutely confident that both Sweden and Turkey will adhere to the agreement, and also that this will continue after accession. And to ensure that, we actually established last year in Madrid what we call the permanent mechanism to ensure the continued cooperation on the fighting terrorism. And just the fact that we have met many times since Madrid to step up our cooperation in the fight against terrorism demonstrates that this is a lasting agreement and a lasting commitment that will also be there after Sweden joins the alliance.
A question on the bilateral or multilateral security guarantees, which are not part of NATO, as I understand. Can you elaborate a little bit what they will contain, which countries will participate, and as of what time they will be valid? So is it only when there's a ceasefire, when the war is over? So, and will it be concluded here at the summit? Thank you.
At the NATO summit, we will agree a package for Ukraine with more practical support, with stronger political ties, and also decisions to move Ukraine closer to NATO membership. And the exact language will be available later on this today. Then some allies are also then having a bilateral or multilateral dialogue with Ukraine on a framework to have in place to ensure continued support for Ukraine. I think it would be wrong if I go into the exact language of that and also exactly how that will be made public. But of course, this will complement and supplement the decisions made at the NATO summit.
Secretary General, the question about potential Wagner mercenaries in Belarus. Are there any traces of their presence seen by NATO? Thank you.
The answer is no. So far, we haven't seen any deployment or movement of any Wagner forces into Belarus. But of course, again, we follow closely what's happening, and of course, for Lithuania, a neighbor, it matters. NATO is here. We are ready to defend against any potential threat, but so far we haven't seen any deployment of Wagner forces to Belarus.
Thank you. Ida Hallikainen from Ilta-Sanomat, Finland. How do you feel, was Finland's and Sweden's ratification process too slow, and what kind of message will the membership send to Russia? Thank you.
Also, this sends a very clear message to Russia, to President Putin, that NATO's door remains open and that it is for NATO allies to decide on enlargement. Moscow, President Putin doesn't have a veto on NATO enlargement. And this is demonstrated by the fact that Finland is now already a full-fledged member, and that we yesterday agreed to also make Sweden a full member, that Turkey will ratify the accession protocols for Sweden. So this sends a clear and strong message, and it also demonstrates that President Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine was a big strategic mistake. He totally underestimated the Ukrainians, he underestimated the unity of NATO allies, but he also underestimated the political consequences in countries like Sweden and Finland. He went to war because he wanted less NATO. He's getting more NATO military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and 2 new members. Finland, already a member, and then Sweden, soon to become a member. So that just highlights the big strategic mistake that President Putin made when he invaded Ukraine. Let me also add that this has been the fastest accession process in NATO's modern history. That's obviously the case for Finland, which is already a member, but also for Sweden. So this has actually gone fast. You have to remember that Sweden and Finland applied for membership in May last year. Already in June, all our allies invited both Finland and Sweden to become members. Then Finland was ratified a few months later, and Sweden obtained this invitee status after the decision in Madrid, and now also their accession will be ratified. So this has been fast, and that demonstrates the unity and the resolve and the commitment of NATO allies to demonstrate that NATO's door remains open.
Mark Vivastanik, Serbia. Mr. Stoltenberg, Mr. President Vučić said that he will ask a meeting with you. Do we meet, and when? And why KFOR allows special units for Pristina in the north of Kosovo and Metohija, despite Serbians, and can do anything with that?
As I'm in regular contact with President Alexander Vučić, and of course I'm ready to meet. We are concerned about the increased tensions in Kosovo, and we call on all parties to de-escalate and to refrain from any action that can further increase tensions in the region. NATO is present in Kosovo. We have the KFOR forces there that are there to ensure security and stability for Kosovo and the people living in Kosovo. We execute our UN mandate in an impartial way, and NATO has increased its presence in Kosovo, added some 100 extra KFOR troops because of the instability and the violence and the tensions we have seen over the last weeks. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Good morning. This is we are representing Norway, and what proves to be historic summit. I would first say that few countries in NATO will be more touched by the fact that Sweden is now becoming a member. And for the first time in modern history, the entire Nordic region will be unified. And that has profound positive implications for the way we defend our security, our defense, and how we will contribute positively to NATO. NATO is a threat to none. This is an organization of collective security which will be enhanced by Sweden. Secondly, it is historic because we will now, through updated regional plans, updated regional structure, command structure, and we will secure the funding of NATO operations. That is a result of hard work in the entire alliance. And finally, we will reconfirm our support to Ukraine. Norway has committed a 5-year program of support to Ukraine militarily and in the civilian and humanitarian area. And we hope to see this meeting issue a very clear prospect to Ukraine that their future lies in NATO, that we enhance our cooperation. At the first meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Council will underline that political dimension. So this is
Prime Minister, people are now saying with the inclusion of Sweden and Finland into NATO that we now have the Baltic as a so-called NATO lake. Do you feel there will be some retributions, more enhanced military activity from the Russians in response to the fact that, as you mentioned, Scandinavia is now complete with the Baltics and northern Germany and Poland in completing that NATO lake?
Think about it this way. We are all members of NATO, but we don't change as nations. Again, we are a threat to none. We want peace and stability in our region. The threat has come from Russia's aggression in Ukraine. That led Finland and Sweden to make historic decisions to join NATO. It took a bit more than a year when that was finalized. But we will still be Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland and Denmark from the Nordic perspective. We will be contributing to peace, stability and cooperation. But there also has to be solid defense and deterrence, and that has been as a result of Russia's aggression. That is the fact.
Meeting for my country, and you know we are in close proximity to the neighbor Belarus. We are in close proximity.
Well, I think things have happened since 2008, so it will have to take that into account.
Right now,
we are now
Vilnius,
supporting Ukraine. We will enhance cooperation between Ukraine and NATO. And I think the perspective of Ukraine having a future in NATO will be underlined. Well, there are discussions among in the G7 sector of having security guarantees.
It will be an inaugural meeting of Finland with all of us, and we hope that the decisions on Ukraine will be also bold enough, decisive enough, meaning that we will not only repeat the mantra of open doors of NATO, but also to show the clear pathway, how to proceed, how to find these doors. and as conditions allow. And Ukraine, and it was repeated during my recent bilateral meeting with the President Joe Biden, it will be possible to become full-fledged member of NATO as the conditions allow, if the war is over and the reforms are implemented. By the way, the reforms should be implemented anyway, because Ukraine is approaching European Union membership too. And this is the reason why this country, even being in the middle of the war, is doing great job in implementing the reforms of anti-corruption and other reforms. The Defense Investment Pledge, 2% as a bare minimum, 2% as a floor instead of ceiling. Very good decision, and we are all on board, and Lithuania is showing the example, because our spending on defense is already 2.5%, and we intend to increase it in the future. What else? Regional defense plans. Okay, we agreed on regional defense plans which take into account the fragile security situation in the Baltic region, especially Suwalki Gap. I think this is very important to have the decisions to assign the necessary forces, to have the prepositioning, taking into account just a very tense situation in this region. You know, Lithuania is sandwiched between Belarus on the one hand and Kaliningrad, heavily militarized region of Kaliningrad. And this Suwalki Gap is a small line, narrow line between those two adversaries. So we should not let our adversaries to cut off the NATO support coming, and we have to defend each inch of our territory, and I am just sure that we will be able to do that in unity. But the unity should be decisive. Unity should be productive. And I hope that Vilnius Summit will be the example of productive unity. Yes.
How close to an invitation is Ukraine getting today?
I hope there will be invitation to proceed. Not just open the doors of NATO right now, because then we have the discussion about the activation of Article 5. But very clear signal at not repeating the old formulas of Bucharest Summit. I think we will do more. First of all, we will remove member actions plans, maps. Then we will create institutional framework for closer cooperation between Ukraine and NATO, meaning that tomorrow we will have inaugural meeting of Ukraine NATO Council. So all this shows that we do enough in order to send a positive signal to our brothers and sisters Ukrainians. And I hope that these decisions, these news coming from Vilnius will just increase the fighting spirit and moral spirit of them. And we will be persistent, we will be tough enough to support Ukraine until the victory.
President Alzada, is enough being done to support the eastern flank, to support Lithuania, Poland, all the Bucharest 9 countries from the bigger powers who are, quite frankly, slower to militarize?
Well, the support is there, but sometimes, of course, we would wish support comes faster. The decision making should be quicker, especially reacting to what is happening in the proximity of Lithuania, especially Belarus. And I mentioned to President Biden that Belarus really becomes an issue. And this is not like Belarus in, let's say, in 2020. Now we should not have any illusions. This country is not independent anymore. This is one more gubernia of Russian Federation. So Russian military forces, the Belarusian territory is fully available for Russian military forces to plan the operations against Ukraine. The recent announcement that tactical nuclear weapons will be placed, will be deployed on Belarusian soil is in the stage of implementation. We know that, and this is only the matter of time when they will finalize it. Then instrumentalized migration is going on. Yes, this is not like it was 2 years ago, but still there. So all this as a complex shows that security situation in our region is not stable, is not improving, is deteriorating. And I hope that we will bring this news, this understanding to our allies, to our partners, and this will be one of the potential topics of our discussion today and tomorrow.
And Mr. President,
Thank you.
Sorry, the line is waiting, so probably it will be possible to communicate, I think, in the future. But my colleagues are waiting for you. All the best.
Can I use this one? Good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here at this NATO summit. Politically, a very important summit, but also symbolically to have this NATO summit here in Lithuania and one of the Baltic countries. Main message, of course, is our unity towards Ukraine. I think what we have shown over the past 17 months was definitely unexpected from the other side, and the support that we have given, I think, is only showing what we will be able to continue, and we are in here for a long run support, and we'll continue supporting. Second topic obviously is in our unity is the fact that Sweden is joining us, and again it shows that NATO is the best guarantee for countries on the North Atlantic side of the world to have security guarantees, and we're extremely happy to have Finland and now Sweden part of NATO.
Prime Minister, is an EU army not an alternative to NATO then? A lot of people talk about it, the French have talked about it as well. Do we need an EU army, or is NATO the right place for the Western defence?
From our perspective, NATO really is the cornerstone of security on the North Atlantic side, and definitely in the European continent. What we see is that a lot of European countries are cooperating one with another. We're doing that with the Netherlands for our marine activities. We're doing that with France for our terrestrial activities. So we see that the integration is happening. Maybe even more important is the industrial cooperation that is happening, and that I think is something we don't talk often enough about. We are creating a European defense industry that is able to scale up in situations like this. Wait, I'll comment there. Well, first of all, we're happy that there is found a solution for NATO to join, for Sweden to join NATO. Turkey is a partner, and we've been working on a lot of topics, for example, migration with Turkey, and it's quite clear that we will continue in doing so. If Turkey wants to increase the cooperation with the European Union, obviously we're open for that, and we're open for the discussion. It looks like that there is a new degree of openness to open that discussion on the Turkish side. That's good. Let's talk and let's see what we can work together on. Well, it's definitely something that will be discussed in the European Council, but the Commission obviously has to play its role in it. And really, I wouldn't try to find a diversion between the Council and the Commission. I think we're quite united on that. C'est clair que l'Ukraine un jour fera partie de l'OTAN, et on voit que dans les conclusions qu'on discutera aujourd'hui, on offre cette perspective. On parle même d'une invitation de devenir membre au moment où tout le monde sera d'accord et naturellement les conditions seront remplies. Mais je pense que la vraie discussion importante aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas la perspective de devenir membre, elle le sera un jour, mais c'est quelle garantie de sécurité est-ce qu'on offre à court terme. Ça, chacun des pays, on fait beaucoup d'efforts. On sait que d'autres pays vont s'exprimer aujourd'hui et demain par rapport à des garanties de sécurité. Et en fait, ces trois éléments, c'est la perspective de devenir membre et les garanties de sécurité. C'est la conversation politique qui est créée avec ce conseil entre l'OTAN et l'Ukraine. Et c'est le support non létal que les pays de l'OTAN offrent. Oui, notre ambition, on a été clair par rapport à nos 2% avec la perspective de 2035. Quand on parle ici du fait que 2% doit être un effort soutenu, la Belgique souscrit ça complètement. All right.
Hi. So, good morning, everybody. Glad to see so many of you here today. We are having this historical summit. First of all, we are again reconfirming that Russia is the biggest threat to NATO's alliance. And for that threat, we need to adopt new defense plans. And many of you know that before the Madrid summit, I was explaining in human words how the plans really work, or the plans we had that time work in practice. So now I'm very glad that we got strong decisions out of Madrid, so that we moved from deterrence posture to defense posture. And today, hopefully, we're going to adopt the new defense plans that mean that we are able to defend our territory from the first moment, from the first centimeter. And this is very, very important. But what it requires from all of us is to invest more in defense. So this 2% of the defense investment pledge that we have given is very important, but it also is important that all the allies are doing this so that we can fulfill the plans with actual capabilities, and the troops are ready to defend the region. And this is all necessary that it would act as a deterrence. Just to bring you an example, in 1988, all the allies were making 2% of their GDP. They were investing in defense because the threat was real, and the threat is real today as well. Also, one of the questions that we are still debating is the Ukraine membership in NATO. Of course, we understand that it can't happen while the war is going on. We are listening very carefully for the worries that some of the allies have, and I think that we are going to reach a good compromise. That means that there will be a clear pathway for Ukraine to NATO membership, because NATO's membership is the only cheapest and actual working security guarantee there is. And if the war ends, then the opportunity window opens and Ukraine can join also NATO. And positive decisions regarding Sweden, we really welcome Sweden joining NATO. This means a lot for the whole security of our region, but also making NATO much stronger. Thank you. Of course, we can't draft Ukraine into NATO. We have to have concrete steps how Ukraine will get into NATO when the war is over. And therefore, we are working on those very practical steps. The first thing is the Ukraine-NATO Council, and that is a clear way how to consult with the allies equally, because it works like the Article 4 for the allies works. And there are other steps as well, how to make everything happen so that when the conditions meet, we are ready to accept Ukraine.
Prime Minister, you said that security guarantees or arrangements. Can you elaborate a little bit which countries are backing it, what will be in, where will Turkey fully ask for, and we have a better idea of what will happen?
Of course, security assurances, knowing that those security assurances were given some time ago as well, and they didn't really function because the war is going on, so that now the G7 countries are thinking of providing the military assistance to Ukraine when the war is going on. And all the other allies can also join this pledge. G7 is the leading force because they are the biggest allies in NATO.
What is your message to the countries that are not yet spending 2% of GDP and defense? Is it good enough to reach the target in 5 years, in 8 years? What's your message?
My message to those countries who are not spending 2% yet is that the threat is real. I bring you this example. In 1933, our defense investment was record low because there was no political support for it. And in 1939, we wanted to increase the defense spending by 100%, but it was already too late. And with the defense spending, we can't act when the crisis is here. We have to act before, because that means procurement, that means production and all of it. And when in 1988 all the allies were investing 2% to defense, it was because they felt that the threat is real. And now the threat is very real as the conventional war is going on. So I really urge all the allies to do it faster.
Other leaders of nations mentioned that maybe dropped other measures, security guarantees. What do you think more can be agreed during your meeting with other leaders? Regarding Ukraine, of course.
This work has been very intense. I mean, the debates are going on all the time. We have 31 countries that are all democracies, and in democracies we debate, and we have reached already a good compromise and working on this as well. As I was mentioning, the NATO-Ukraine Council is the first step. Dropping the map is also one of the conditions, but also practical steps how to get to the membership. I mean, interoperability of equipment. Ukraine is using the equipment that the allies are giving and the ammunition, so it is already ticking those boxes. So what more can we do in order to really go to that membership? In political medium, we hear the worries that different allies have regarding the membership, but these are the same worries that were regarding us joining. And I just recently read the book about NATO's history, and it was very interesting how Germans at the time when the Visegrad countries were accepted didn't really want the Visegrad countries in, but then one of the representatives said that it's better that the Poles fight than the Germans fight the Russians. So here we have the Ukrainians fighting and not the Germans or Estonians or Americans. Like. Just like the military plans are not public, so that the concrete plans regarding helping and defending Ukraine are also not public, because it depends on different allies what they can give to Ukraine to support. So this will be up to the allies to decide. Okay, thank you.
C'est là ou là? Bien, bonjour mesdames et messieurs. Avant de commencer donc ce sommet de l'OTAN, je voulais simplement dire que d'abord, c'est à nos yeux un sommet qui nous permettra de répondre aux objectifs que nous nous étions donnés à Madrid. Et je me félicite de l'accord qui a été obtenu hier pour justement l'entrée de la Suède, et heureux aussi d'avoir la Finlande qui sera autour de la table avec nous comme comme membre, vous savez que la France a soutenu cet agenda. C'est aussi un message très fort de soutien à tous les membres de l'Alliance. Et vous savez que la France, depuis le début de cette guerre, a renforcé sa présence avec 1000 de nos soldats qui sont présents en Roumanie, 300 en Estonie, plus une police aérienne qui fait que la France est un grand contributeur du renforcement de l'OTAN sur son flanc Est. Et puis compte tenu de la situation et de la contre-offensive qui est menée par l'Ukraine, j'ai pris la décision d'accroître les livraisons d'armes et d'équipements et de permettre d'avoir justement des capacités de frappe dans la profondeur aux Ukrainiens, toujours en gardant la clarté et la cohérence de notre doctrine, c'est-à-dire permettre à l'Ukraine de défendre son territoire. Et donc nous avons décidé de livrer de nouveaux missiles permettant des frappes dans la profondeur à l'Ukraine. Ce sera donc déployé conformément aux engagements que nous avons pris avec eux. Merci beaucoup. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, ce qui est important pour nous, c'est d'envoyer un message de soutien à l'Ukraine, d'unité de l'OTAN et de détermination à ce que la Russie ne doive emporter cette guerre. Et c'est la grammaire dans laquelle nous devons rester. Je ne vous donnerai pas de chiffres aujourd'hui, mais je vous remercie de traduire ainsi les termes que je viens d'évoquer. C'est ce qui a été décidé et nous répondrons aux besoins qui ont été exprimés par l'Ukraine. Merci beaucoup. Merci à vous.
Well, yesterday we took a few very important, decisive steps towards the Swedish accession to NATO. We had very good conversations together with President Erdogan and Secretary General Jenso Stoltenbergo, and we agreed on a joint statement. It's well known that Sweden, after 200 years of non-alignment, we seek common protection, but I also want all NATO allies to know that we also provide security, provide.
Hello to. This is a very. Прво, ова е исклучително важен состанок, доаѓа во многу важен момент, во момент кога практично се води војна во Украина. Состанокот доаѓа после самитот во Мадрид, после кој имаше навистина многу работа која што ја работеа министрите за одбрана, министрите за надворешни работи и секако представниците во постојаното седиште на НАТО. Ќе бидат донесени неколку многу важни заклучоци. Прво, ќе бидат донесени одлуки во однос на регионалните аспекти на одбраната на НАТО земјите, и тоа вода, копно и воздух. Секако и аспектите на сајбер и на сајбер одбраната и на одбраната од хибридни напади. Следно ќе бидат донесени одлуки во однос на унапредувањето на соработката со Украина. Практично ќе биде формиран совет на НАТО и Украина, на кој што во иднина ќе можат да се носат и одлуки кои што се однесуваат на заедничката соработка. Дополнително во однос на финансирањето на сите овие зголемени потреби за одбраната во овој нов геостратешки контекст, ќе биде донесена одлука во однос на финансирањето, и тоа значи дека 2% од бруто домашниот производ ќе биде практично минимумот за финансирање на одбраната, со тоа што најмалку 20% да бидат за модернизација. Северна Македонија е земја која што на модернизација веќе инвестира 30% од буџетот за одбрана, што секако дека е потребно во овој контекст. Дополнително, во однос на идната соработка со Украина, Северна Македонија има многу јасна позиција. Ние како 30-та земја членка секогаш поддржуваме отворена врата на пристапување во НАТО, меѓутоа секако како ќе бидат согледани сите безбедносни аспекти на актуелниот момент. И она што е многу важно, НАТО покажа дека е единствено како никогаш досега и донесена е голема одлука со тоа што Шведска ќе биде 32-та земја членка на НАТО после вчерасните успешни разговори помеѓу генералниот секретар на НАТО господинот Столтенберг, председателот на Турција, премиерот на Шведска. Очекувам успешен состанок. Мојот ден денес ќе започне со билатерална средба со премиерката на Естонија, утре имам билатерална средба со премиерот на Грција и секако одделни состаноци и со индопацифичките држави, наши партнери, со кои што ќе разговараме за глобалните аспекти на безбедноста и одбраната. Благодарам.
Jel možemo? Pa evo, samit se održava u izazovnim okolnostima za evropsku bezbjednost, ali upravo u takvim okolnostima NATO pokazuje jedinstvo, kredibilnost i relevantnost. Nastavljamo podršku Ukrajini, posvećeni smo Ukrajini i na taj način i podižemo u okviru ovoga samita dijalog između NATO i Ukrajine na viši nivo formiranjem Savjeta NATO-Ukrajina, čime dodatno pružamo perspektivu ukrajinskom članstvu u NATO savezu. Također očekujem i jedan sveobuhvatan paket podrške, finansijske podrške Ukrajini u narednom periodu, u okviru koga će naravno Crna Gora također i učestvovati. Jedan od glavnih ishoda ovog samita je i jačanje strategije odvraćanja i odbrane, između ostalog i kroz usvajanje regionalnih planova odbrane. Posvećeni smo izdvajanju za odbranu u nivou 2% BDP-a. Zadovoljan sam što će Crna Gora već ostvariti ove godine upravo taj cilj. Tako da također mislim da će biti riječi i o situaciji na Zapadnom Balkanu. Ponovit ću ulogu koju Crna Gora ima, a to je uloga punopravne članice NATO-a i na taj način dodatno promovisanja stabilnosti i mira. I još jedna stvar koja je vrlo važan rezultat ovog samita, to je jačanje partnerstva između NATO članica i zemalja Indo-Pacifika, između ostalog Japana, Južne Koreje, Australije i Novog Zelanda, a u kontekstu dodatno velikih globalnih izazova u dijelu odbrane i bezbjednosti. Pa upravo ja očekujem da u okviru ovog samita se negdje dijalog između NATO-a i Ukrajine podigne na veći nivo formiranjem savjeta između NATO-a i Ukrajine i na taj način dodatno nakon samita iz Bukurešta iz 2008. godine dodatno pružimo jednu perspektivu u Ukrajini kao budućoj NATO članici. Tako je, pa ove godine će negdje stavljati fokus biti na to da neće više biti samo cilj dostizanje 2% izdvajanja u odnosu na BDP za odbranu, nego će to upravo biti negdje najmanji dio koji treba izdvajati. Crna Gora već ove godine će ispuniti taj cilj. Znate da mnoge druge članice još uvijek nisu došle do toga cilja, tako da Crna Gora u tom smislu ima jednu dobru startnu poziciju. Pa mi smo svi srećni što je upravo ovaj summit, prvi summit na kome Finska učestvuje kao punopravna članica, a upravo su i juče došle dobre vijesti sa sastanka između predsjednika Erdogana i predsjednika vlade Švedske, gdje je odmrznut proces ratifikacije ulaska Švedske u NATO, tako da ja očekujem da to u turskom parlamentu ubrzo bude i okončano, čime će Švedska postati još jedna 32. punopravna članica NATO alijanse. Mislim da svaka zemlja ima svoje pravo da bira svoju spoljnu politiku.
This one is the Spanish media. Bueno, buenos días, ¿cómo estáis? ¿Habéis dormido? ¿Habéis seguido el debate? Y claro, luego habéis empalmado. Pues igual que yo. Bueno, lo primero, trasladar el compromiso del Gobierno de España, del conjunto de la sociedad española, con la OTAN, reconocer el trabajo también del Gobierno de Lituania y de su presidente Gitanas en la celebración y en la hospitalidad y en el éxito de esta cumbre tan importante para la OTAN y para toda la alianza euroatlántica. Hoy vamos a tratar, como saben ustedes, y a lo largo del día de mañana, el desarrollo de lo que se ha llamado el concepto estratégico de Madrid, que fue la estrategia que aprobamos el año pasado en la cumbre de la capital de España para los próximos 10 años de la Alianza Atlántica. Vamos a hablar de la disuasión, vamos a hablar también de la cohesión de los aliados en torno a los valores, los principios que enarbola la OTAN. Y en ese sentido sí quisiera en primer lugar trasladar la unidad de todos los aliados, también del Gobierno de España, con Ucrania, con el país agredido por el imperialismo de Putin. En segundo lugar también trasladar que España, lógicamente, como miembro comprometido de la OTAN, va a anunciar hoy un despliegue de fuerzas y de soldados españoles en el país de Eslovaquia para reforzar el frente oriental, y también vamos a reforzar con un mayor número de efectivos nuestro contingente en Rumanía. Finalmente, como saben, pues para España es muy importante, y ya está recogido también en el concepto estratégico de Madrid, la estrategia 360 grados y, por tanto, el no olvidar el flanco sur y, por tanto, el que la OTAN mire a toda la fuente de inestabilidad, de riesgos, de desafíos que tenemos en el flanco sur. Como saben ustedes, también vamos a tener y vamos a contar con la participación de todos los Estados miembros de la Unión Europea y también del Indo-Pacífico, donde vamos a, lógicamente, poder evaluar y también valorar la situación geopolítica en esa zona del mundo. En fin, venimos con el ánimo de reconocer, en primer lugar, el trabajo bien hecho por parte del Gobierno de Lituania. En segundo lugar, reconocer también y valorar el compromiso del secretario general de la OTAN, Stoltenberg, por mantenerse un año más. Y finalmente, anunciar ese compromiso del Gobierno de España en el despliegue y en el refuerzo de nuestra presencia en el frente oriental, primero en Rumanía y con nuevas tropas en Eslovaquia. Y a partir de aquí, si quieren, como hemos visto durante estos últimos años, de un terrorismo, el de ETA, que desapareció afortunadamente porque lo venció la democracia española hace 11 años, y, por tanto, yo salgo satisfecho de este debate. Creo que ha sido un debate donde se han clarificado muchas cosas y, sobre todo, lo que ha quedado meridianamente claro es que quien tiene un proyecto...
Concrete steps to move in this direction, that it's very clear that this direction is being undertaken, and that we as NATO allies send a strong enough signal to our Ukrainian friends and partners. Not only do we need, of course, to continue to supply them with ammunition, with weapons, with money, with humanitarian aid for as long as it takes for them to win this war, but we have to think seriously about what happens afterwards and how to ensure a lasting peace. I'm convinced that's the only way to secure that lasting peace. But today, I'm convinced that as we go into the room, we will come out even stronger than we are today.
Prime Minister, is there an appetite from European nations to get to the 2%? I hear your aspirations for a bigger north of that. I see what the Poles are doing. I see what the United States and other nations are doing. The largest nations in Europe are struggling to get to 2%. I talk about Germany mainly as well. How do we reach 2%, let alone get to 3%?
Well, many things have changed in the past year. So the German government indicated their Zeitenwende, which includes a 100 billion euro investment package for defense. These monies are now starting to come into the system. When these monies are in, they will be at the 2%. So Germany's commitment is quite clear. Of course, we need to see all of that come in. But the thinking around the room, around the table has changed since everyone sees that Russia is not sure that there will not be the next war.
Do you plan to discuss the Belarus problem? How do you see the threat from Belarus?
We see from Latvia's side that Belarusian independence is de facto gone. This is a complete satellite of Russia. The threat is very real. We keep a very wary eye on everything along our southern border. We work very closely together with the Lithuanians and the Poles. We have a full situational awareness, and we will continue to support the Belarusian democratic opposition. And I'm convinced that eventually that opposition will succeed. History is on their side. We just have to get through this section, this part of time together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important summit because we are starting new regional defense plans for the eastern flank of the alliance. For Slovakia is very important. Predictable, coordinated air defense mechanism. I'm very glad that we have progress when it comes to Sweden membership in NATO, and I expected the concrete progress when it comes to membership, future membership of Ukraine. Pre slovenské médiá som veľmi rada, že sa zúčastňujem tohoto summitu, pretože je veľmi významný z hľadiska obrany, najmä obrany, protizdušnej obrany na východnom krídle aliancie, ktoré je Slovenskou súčasťou. Pre Slovensko je veľmi dôležitý, predvídateľný a koordinovaný mechanizmus protizdušnej obrany. Som veľmi rada, že nastal progres, pokiaľ ide o švédske členstvo v Severoatlantickej aliancii. A moje očakávania sú samozrejme spojené aj s konkrétnym posunom, pokiaľ ide o budúce členstvo Ukrajiny v Severoatlantickej aliancii. Ďakujem veľmi pekne.
Good morning. I hope that we will have very effective and decisive summit. We have few very interesting topics to discuss, and I hope we'll make decisions, important decisions for NATO, for Ukraine, and also, as I hope you can understand, for eastern flank of NATO, because I am the president of Poland, so eastern flank is especially interesting for me. And that's the most important things. To jest bardzo, bardzo dobra wiadomość. Szczerze mówiąc, czekaliśmy na nią do ostatniej chwili. Mieliśmy nadzieję, że ta akceptacja jednak będzie, bo to jest rozsądne rozwiązanie. Obecność zarówno Finlandii, która już jest częścią NATO, jak i Szwecji, która wierzę w to głęboko, w najbliższym czasie stanie się częścią NATO, z całą pewnością ogromnie wzmacnia Sojusz Północnoatlantycki, zwłaszcza w tej naszej części Europy, w Europie Środkowej i tutaj od północy, więc mogę powiedzieć tak, jako prezydent Polski wyrażam satysfakcję i radość z tego powodu, że sprawy idą w dobrym kierunku. Polska na szczycie NATO jest częścią Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckiego. Sojusz Północnoatlantycki musi być jednością. Polska nie załatwia nic dla siebie, tylko dla NATO, dla wschodniej flanki NATO, także dla państw bałtyckich, dla innych państw, które są naszymi sąsiadami właśnie w tej wschodniej części. Dbamy także o interesy naszego sąsiada Ukrainy, który dzisiaj jest, jak wiemy, od ponad roku w stanie wojny, bo broni się przed brutalną rosyjską agresją i będziemy czynili wszystko, żeby zapewnić pokój. Naszym interesie jest to, żeby Rosja musiała wycofać się, opuścić okupowane terytoria Ukrainy, żeby przywrócony został prymat prawa międzynarodowego i wierzymy tutaj głęboko, że NATO jako całość, jako najsilniejszy sojusz obronny na świecie wesprze w tym Ukrainę i będzie prowadziło skuteczną politykę, która do tego doprowadzi. Tak, chcemy przedyskutować oczywiście kwestie bezpieczeństwa wschodniej flanki NATO i generalnie państw NATO jako takich, Europy, no ale nie tylko, bo mamy zapowiadaną od dłuższego czasu przez prezydenta Putina relokację taktycznej broni nuklearnej rosyjskiej na Białoruś. Mamy zapowiadaną relokację najemników grupy Wagnera, rosyjskich najemników grupy Wagnera na Białoruś. To razem zmienia architekturę bezpieczeństwa w bezpośrednim sąsiedztwie NATO i z całą pewnością to wymaga dyskusji i wymaga także decyzji ze strony NATO. We know and we understand what's the situation. We are neighbors of the Ukraine. Ukraine is now under Russian invasion. There is terrible war. We know what it means. We have millions of Ukrainian refugees in Poland. So I think I can say that all Poles, Polish society, understand and we have to spend more for our defense, to increase our military capabilities, to increase our defense capabilities, and this is crucial now, so that's why we made these decisions. I have one message. We should establish straight and clear path for Ukraine to NATO. And that's all. O, mam taką nadzieję, uczestniczymy w ich przygotowaniu. Dyskutujemy nad nimi.
Es ist sehr gut, dass wir jetzt hier in Vilnius zusammenkommen zu unserem NATO-Gipfel. Ein ganz wichtiges Treffen, das auch ein Zeichen der Geschlossenheit und Solidarität ist. Die NATO ist in den letzten Jahren enger zusammengewachsen. Das hat man auch gesehen an dem schon erfolgten Beitritt Finnlands zur NATO. Und das ist auch verbunden mit der jetzt gesicherten Entscheidung, dass auch Schweden der NATO angehören wird. Ein großer Fortschritt und eine, wie ich finde, unverändert sehr wichtige Veränderung, die die NATO insgesamt stärken wird. Wir haben in den letzten Jahren alle unsere Beiträge dazu geleistet, zu reagieren auf den russischen Angriffskrieg auf die Ukraine. Der russische Angriffskrieg ist eine Gefahr für die europäische Friedens- und Sicherheitsarchitektur. Es war immer unsere gemeinsame Überzeugung, dass Grenzen nicht mit Gewalt verschoben werden dürfen. Genau das aber versucht Russland. Und deshalb ist es auch richtig, dass so viele Staaten die Ukraine dabei unterstützen, ihre Integrität und Souveränität, ihr eigenes Land zu verteidigen. Deutschland steht da vorne ganz mit dabei und hat das in den letzten Monaten seit Beginn des Krieges mit großer Intensität ausgeweitet, was wir an Unterstützung gewährleisten. Und wir werden das in den nächsten Jahren auch weiter tun. Gerade jetzt ist noch mal ein neues Paket von knapp 700 Millionen Euro geschnürt worden, das uns in die Lage versetzt, die Ukraine jetzt unmittelbar weiter zu unterstützen. Alles zusammen wird es hier darauf ankommen, die gefundene Einigkeit und Solidarität auch weiter voranzubringen. Und dazu zählt natürlich auch, dass wir all die wichtigen Entscheidungen treffen, die erforderlich sind, damit die NATO sich auch als Verteidigungsbündnis gut neu aufstellt. Denn wir müssen uns ja gegen eine Bedrohung unseres Territoriums wappnen. Und das ist mit den Entscheidungen, die hier getroffen werden, auch verbunden. Dazu zählt im Übrigen ja auch die Entscheidung, dass mindestens 2% der Wirtschaftsleistung für Verteidigung entlang der NATO-Kriterien ausgegeben werden soll. Deutschland ist mit den Mitteln, die wir im Haushalt bereitstellen, unserem Sondervermögen nächstes Jahr in der Lage, genau das zu erreichen. Für uns ist von Anfang an wichtig, dass es Sicherheitszusagen für die Ukraine gibt, die nach einem Frieden wirksam sein können. Und dazu werden wir auch jetzt die notwendigen Vereinbarungen treffen, die jetzt für das, was wir aktuell an Unterstützung leisten, relevant sind, aber auch für das, was dann in einer Friedenssituation erforderlich ist. Da werden die G7-Staaten eine gemeinsame Erklärung miteinander hier festhalten, die das ausdrückt und die dann ganz konkret von den einzelnen Ländern ausgefüllt wird, so wie wir das ja jetzt auch schon aktiv tun mit unserer Unterstützung der Ukraine. Es ist ganz wichtig, dass wir hier eine gemeinsame Entscheidung treffen als NATO zu der Frage, wie das, was wir in Bukarest entschieden haben, auch weiterentwickelt werden kann. Und das ist alles auf einem guten Weg. Die USA und Deutschland haben da sehr präzise sich an der Diskussion beteiligt, um möglich zu machen, dass wir hier genau das Richtige tun. Jetzt geht es darum, dass wir die Ukraine aktiv unterstützen bei der Verteidigung ihrer Souveränität und Integrität, auch mit den Waffenlieferungen, die all die Staaten jeweils mobilisieren. Deutschland ist ja nach den USA der zweitgrößte Unterstützer der Ukraine. Und wir werden das ja auch in Zukunft sein. Das gilt dann um die Sicherheitsgarantien, die Frage, wie das sich für die Zukunft entwickelt. Und dann ist es natürlich wichtig, dass wir auch genau die Schritte beschreiben, die sich entlang der Frage, wie sich das Verhältnis weiterentwickeln kann, auch bewegen. Dazu zählt ja im Übrigen auch jetzt die Entscheidung, dass wir die Zusammenarbeit zwischen NATO und Ukraine mit einem gemeinsamen Rat vertiefen.
Herr Schulz, is Germany finally...
Deutschland hat einen großen Schritt vorwärts gemacht und wir werden in der Lage sein, das 2%-Ziel einzuhalten. Mit den Mitteln des Bundeshaushaltes und mit den Mitteln des Sondervermögens ist das vorbereitet. Und wir werden gleichzeitig dafür Sorge tragen, dass das auch in Zukunft so geht. Mein Eindruck ist, dass viele Staaten, die zur NATO dazugehören, jetzt aber auch sich auf den Weg gemacht haben, sodass dieses Ziel, das wir hier vereinbaren, anders als in den letzten Jahren eines ist, das realistisch in kürzerer Zeit von den Mitgliedstaaten der NATO auch umgesetzt wird, was natürlich unsere gemeinsame Fähigkeit zur Bündnisverteidigung auch erheblich stärken wird. Und das, finde ich, ist ein ganz guter Fortschritt. Wir haben beim letzten Europäischen Rat Beschlüsse gefasst, wie wir die Beziehung zwischen der Türkei und der Europäischen Union weiterentwickeln wollen und dazu auch die Europäische Kommission aufgefordert, Vorschläge und Berichte vorzulegen, damit wir das voranbringen können. Ich werde hier auch mit Präsident Erdogan sprechen. Die Türkei ist ein wichtiger Partner für uns und das wird dann auch in den künftigen Beziehungen zum Ausdruck kommen. Es ist eine Frage, die auch ganz konkret, wenn ich mich mit Präsident Erdogan hier treffe, eine Rolle spielt, wie wir unsere Beziehungen weiterentwickeln können. Und wie gesagt, ich habe mich sehr dafür eingesetzt, dass der Europäische Rat entsprechende Entscheidungen trifft, was ein Neuaufsetzen der Zusammenarbeit mit der Türkei betrifft. Deutschland wird schon im nächsten Jahr 2% der Wirtschaftsleistung für die Verteidigung ausgeben. Mit den Mitteln unseres Budgets und des Sondervermögens wird das auch erreicht werden. Und wir werden jetzt dafür die Sorge tragen, dass, wenn das Sondervermögen aufgebraucht ist, wir dann aus den regulären Haushaltsmitteln dauerhaft diese Finanzierungsgrundlage weiter gewährleisten können. Thank you.
In-between stage, which is typically part of the accession process, and now it has been decided not to use that in-between step, so that will speed up the process. And we will do everything to make sure that Ukraine, in terms of its defense systems, is fully compatible with NATO. So all these issues, we will make big progress these days. And I believe that unity will be the big word here. That Ukraine will feel it is part of this family, and that we step by step have to make sure that Ukraine gets what it wants, which is the security guarantees and the long-term commitment. Thank you so much.